House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy here at CPAC on Radio Row. Sir, thanks for joining us here on Breitbart News Daily.
Thanks for having me back. I always enjoy being here.
Okay, so I'm asking all the guests this question. The theme here is America versus socialism at CPAC.
Yes.
Make the case for us against socialism.
Freedom versus socialism. There's no better contrast. A fundamental Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders, fundamental belief you got to see. Where did he go for his honeymoon? The Soviet Union. Who does he believe is great? Castro, Venezuela, and others. America is more than a country. America is an idea of self-governance, an unshackling of government, the greatness of what you can become here. There's nothing better in a contrast than what we're going to have for this presidential race.
So, Leader McCarthy, this is my 10th CPAC. I've been coming for a decade. It's pretty remarkable seeing the conservative movement.
I would have
grow
thought
and
you'd been
change.
here longer than 10, but okay.
No, 10. We'll keep it at 10. 2011 was my first one.
Right.
And so I remember back then, Barack Obama was the president. Republicans had just taken the House majority, but the things were kind of looking down. I mean, it took us a while to get the White House back. So the conservative movement's grown a lot stronger over that time frame. I mean, looking around here, we've got stronger conservative media, we've got stronger conservative organizations. I look up and down Radio Row at all of these different places, and now obviously, of course, we have President Trump, which we didn't have then. We had President Obama. Looking back on this past several years and kind of looking towards the future, what are some of the things you think are have gone right for conservatives? What needs to go? What still needs to happen moving forward?
Well, a fundamental thing we need to do is we have to retake the House because we've watched what has tried to stymie this president, even though how successful he has been, standing up to China, making sure we have fair trade in this process, focusing on America first instead of blaming America. At the same time, you still have Nancy Pelosi, who spent her entire time trying to investigate this president instead of working with him. The Democrats lied in the last election. They said they would be different. They would work together. That's not the case. They would go after every element of it. And it is true, we are stronger as conservatives, but I'm also more fearful. You look at these platforms, look at what Twitter is about to do. They just leaked the other day what they plan in the future, where they are going to go in almost like a social score in China on basis against conservatives on what we're saying and others.
That's what you guys are going to talk about here with
we're going to
you
talk
and Don
about a little
and
later.
Senator Hawley.
Prime example is that in this leak, they used a tweet from me taking an article from the Federalist, and they said it was harmful. Why? Because it was conservative. There's nothing wrong inside the article, but they allowed others in there, those in the media, to tell us whether it's good or not. That's equivalent to what China is doing in a social score, whether you could get on an airline or not.
So now, in terms of this year and taking back the House, we've done a lot of interviews about this. We've talked about it quite a bit over the last several months, and I think it's very possible. The rest of the media doesn't seem to buy it, though they're starting to maybe wake up to the fact that this is doable. 18 seats, that's all Republicans need to flip, a net 18 seats. There are 30 districts out there that are currently represented by Democrats that President Trump won in 2016. Lay out the path for us. How do we take back the House majority? How do we take the speakership?
When we spoke last year, it was 19 seats. Now it's 18 because we got a Democrat to switch to Republican. Now that's happened before, but not from the majority party to the minority party.
That's never happened in history.
No, that's the difference part. So then the thing you've got to see, 18 seats, but you really have 54 seats to play in. 30 of these Democrats sit in seat that President Trump carried. The first 13 are what I call ruby red, where the president carried the more than 6 points. South Carolina 1, Oklahoma 5. And the thing you've got to realize, there's 8.8 million Americans who voted for President Trump in 2016 but did not vote in 2018 because they follow the man, they don't follow the party. Had they voted, we would be in the majority by 9 seats. So is this doable? The answer is yes. Does it take hard work? Yes. So we need people to join with us. If you have a listener out there that wants to change the course of history, make the Republicans retake the majority, takethehouse.com. That's where you want to go. That's where you want to engage, because this is where you're going to find the new candidates. And our recruiting class, the best recruiting class ever. Take this one metric. The most Republican women who have ever run for Congress was 143. You know where we are today? 215. more than 200 veterans, more than 200 minorities. This party is expanding and growing, and that's a lot to do with what President Trump has accomplished.
And fundraising's up, too. I know we did a big story about that.
I have been able to break the records for anybody who's raised for a speaker. What we have on cash on hand from where we were last year on the outside is...
I think you broke the record that Speaker Ryan set last
by about $8 million.
And he was the speaker, right?
Yeah, when you think about it, he was the speaker. The president wanted to run for it. We had just won the presidency. I mean, we were getting a great deal amount of money. But that's an indication that we can win, that people out there are seeing this. You look at Wesley Hunt down in Houston. This is not a seat that President Trump carried. He's a graduate of West Point. He happens to be African-American, flew Apaches for 8 years. He's going to win this primary, but he's in polling against Fletcher, a Democrat freshman. He's up by 3 points, having never been elected before, simply because his character of who he is.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. So, and there's a bunch of more. So, in addition to those 30 districts that are
there's
Democrat,
24 seats that are opportunities that Trump didn't even win. You look at Michelle Steele in Orange County, Young Kim, David Valadao. Now, you've got to see this seat. David Valadao's in the Central Valley. T.J. Cox won that seat last year. You know what T.J. Cox just got? A lien from the IRS for $144,000. So you know what? He doesn't want to pay his taxes, but he'll vote to raise yours. I'm introducing a bill that will say this. If you're a member of Congress or Senate, and if you have a tax lien that you won't pay the IRS, the taxpayer shouldn't pay you.
So now, so the other big thing that's happening this year is obviously the top of the ticket. So we've talked a lot about the House races. President Trump's up for re-election. So President Trump's up for re-election. How do we win the White House back? Because this is an astronomical fight. It looks like Bernie Sanders is running away with it on the Democrat side of the aisle. So how do we win the White House back in 2020?
I think we run on the record of this president, but we also run on the idea of socialism versus freedom. You watch this president, how strong he is. I think there's going to be more states in play. We expand the playing field of where we're going to go. And if you notice, no one's paying attention to what I'm saying right now because this guy just sat next to me.
I think we just got the president's son.
I just worked for Kevin McCarthy.
I'm going to tell you,
this is like historic right here.
You want to see a secret weapon out there? Donald Trump Jr. and Kim are on the road more than anybody else in politics. And he can go to any place in this country and be a part of it because he understands what's happening. He listens, but he is one of our strongest voices out there, and I'm excited that he even came to join us.
Well, I'm glad to be with you. And by the way, for those listening, they got to understand that the House leader, Mr. McCarthy, he's the guy in politics that calls me at 11 o'clock on Saturday night, be like, well, on the West Coast, it's 3 hours earlier. I need you to call a couple people for us. And so this guy's become a
working
workhorse.
Around the clock.
He gets it. Most importantly, and what I love, he understands recruitment. He is finding great House candidates so we can win back the House. This is not the Paul Ryan method. And I don't mean to throw your former colleague under the bus, but this is not the Paul Ryan method where we find the guy that's about 700 pounds overweight and say, well, he's been there for 35 years. He's never won a race, but he's our guy. He's finding guys that can win, guys that are good on the stump, guys that understand the issue. It's an awesome team, and honestly, no one works harder at it than him.
Okay, so you guys are both going to be on a panel in a little bit together here with Senator Hawley, focusing in on big tech. So, Don, I want to start with that with you here. So, can you tell us? We just talked with the leader about this a little bit too. Can you tell us what some of the things you're going to zone in on this?
Listen, we're going to talk about all the censorship aspects of it, whether that be the social media platforms. Obviously, I've been really vocal about that because it's happened to me. There were weeks where I'm looking at my Instagram account and I had 100 million something impressions and I had 0 new followers, and I'm saying, that's weird. There's times where I post, and at this point, I do all my own social that way, so I know what's going to move. I'll post at good times, good this, and all of a sudden you see it just take off, and then the next hour it's just like hits a wall. And you know that it's happening, and you only hear these complaints from people on the right, whether that be the religious right, whether that be the 2A crowd, whether that just be people like myself who are sort of vocal firebrands. So we're going to talk about that extensively. We're also going to talk about in terms of a newer issue, sort of the inboxing. If any of your listeners start following, just or subscribe to the emails of the Democratic competition for presidency, then subscribe to Trump and a couple Republican congresspeople or senators, and check your junk mailbox later
They're
on in the day.
sending the Republican stuff
The
to
Republican
junk?
stuff is inevitably going to junk. The Democrats are showing right up there in your inbox. So they're starting to do that on those platforms. Google and all of the Gmail accounts, they're starting to do that. So it's a combination. And I think the real issue, and I'll let Kevin opine on this as well, but because him and I started talking about this early, because I was sort of out of the box early on it, a lot of Republicans didn't even understand that this is actually, in many cases, probably a top 3 issue with our base. The people saw it, but many Republicans were like, no, it's free market. I go, no, it's not free market. When you're getting the protections that big tech is getting from the government, et cetera, it's no longer a free market issue that they can't censor people the way they have been, and it's got to stop.
Yeah, so
this is something
on that.
Don and I talked early on, back when we were in the majority, and we brought a lot of these CEOs in. Mm-hmm. I mean, when we brought Jack in from Twitter, before he said he wasn't shadow banning, then he had to admit that it was happening. Now look what just leaked out, what Twitter wants to do. They want to allow the media out there to start scoring whether what your article is true or not. Mm-hmm. This is a social score based upon trying to go after conservatives.
On people that are totally biased already.
Yes,
because,
exactly.
I mean, Trump has 96% negative coverage from it. We're going to give CNN the ability to fact-check things. I mean, can we fact-check them?
Yeah. I put they used me as an example. I put an article out from the Federalist. They said it was harmful. They said it was harmful.
Yeah, it's harmful to liberal insanity. Yeah. It's harmful for their chances of getting elected because they've lost their minds. It's not actually harmful because it's untrue.
Yes.
It's harmful because it combats the nonsense that their agenda is all about.
So, Don, we already had talked to Leader McCarthy about this. The theme here at CPAC this year is America versus socialism. Can you explain make the case for us against socialism? I'm asking everybody this. I think it's
listen, it's pretty obvious, and it was interesting. I mean, one of the reporters from the great network CNN tried owning me on this one last week because I said, hey, I've waited in those bread lines, and they got the snark, oh, Donald Trump Jr. has waited in bread lines. Well, my mother escaped communism. Mm-hmm. I wrote about it in Triggered, and as a young child, my grandfather had the conversation with my father. He understood the great freedoms that we have here, and he valued that incredibly. And he said, to fully appreciate it, you have to experience the other side. Mm-hmm. So I spoke Czech from like the age of 3. About the age of 5 or 6, he started bringing me over there for a month to 6 weeks every summer. And this was before the fall of the wall. So I've actually waited in those bread lines. I have friends over there. I stay in touch with those people. I've lived it and seen it. And it was always interesting to me that a group of people like the Democrats can get people to show up to a crowd of about 10, and they can preach about the Green New Deal and spending $93 trillion and how that's a wonderful economic model. And they can get them to do that with a straight face. But they can't find someone from Cuba, from Venezuela, from the former Soviet Union, from China, to come here and say, no, we need to bring socialism here because it worked so wonderfully for us. They only find academics. They only find people who've never actually lived under those systems to do it. And that in and of itself should tell you all you need to know about how failed these systems are. But it is a scary notion. Now, of course, I put that back out there, and then the CNN person, rather than retweeting me or saying, oh, I didn't realize that, they just delete their tweet. Because they can't be honest about the conversation. They can't give someone like myself, because, again, I'm the son of a billionaire from New York. I'm not allowed in 2020 to have an opinion. And I'm sure hell not allowed to express that opinion. That's not going to work with me because I'm kind of vocal.
Yeah.
Just take this. There's no socialist country that ever have a problem with people trying to get in. The only problem they ever had was people risking their lives to leave it.
Correct.
That is the best example that anybody has.
I say the boats only go one way, Kevin.
That's exactly.
So then why do we have a socialist on the other side of the aisle leading the Democrat field?
Because it's no longer...
And I asked that to both of you guys.
It's no longer the Democratic Party. This is the Socialist Democratic Party. AOC calls herself that. And don't let any Democrat sit there and say they're upset that Bernie Sanders is their nomination. They have surrendered to the socialists. More than half of them not only support but co-sponsor Medicare for all. That is the takeover of the healthcare system. That is socialism at its greatest strength. That is what they're talking about, taking away the private health insurance of more than 180 million Americans. That is who they are. That's why they have Bernie Sanders is going to be their nominee, because they are socialists.
Yeah, well, this is the theme we've covered before on your show, Matt, which is this is no longer your grandparents' Democrat Party. This is not the party of working-class America. They've totally forgotten that to chase whatever PC shining object there is. What's woke today by tomorrow is alt-right. You can never satisfy their quest for wokedness. And that's what's happened. I mean, you're right, Kevin. I mean, the party has been taken over by the socialists. Now, I think a lot more of them are into that. Now, they're not into talking about it because they realize it doesn't resonate well with the American people. They're tacitly accepting it because they all sort of feel that way. No different than the ABC reporter, again, the other day. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm not just a Democrat socialist. I'm actually just a socialist, making millions of dollars a year to report fake news about Donald Trump.
And openly admit refusing to cover the news.
Yes. And refusing to cover anything good that Trump does because it's not good for ratings, it's not good for their narrative. But that's why we can never take this election lightly, because we are up against a mainstream media complex, multi-billion-dollar enterprise who actually believes this stuff and who will do whatever they can to tip the scales in favor of a Bernie or a Biden or whichever lunatic we get from that side.
All right, well, guys, we're out of time, so I really want to thank both of you guys for coming over here. Donald Trump Jr., Leader McCarthy, good luck on your panel on CPAC. We'll be watching. Where can people go to learn more about each of you guys?
I say takethehouse.com, learn how you could change the majority and protect this president, put America first, don't blame America first.
Well, I just sent them to my social channels, okay? Go check me out there, but then you may have to refollow me a couple times because the tech guys keep making people
they're going to delete it.
Unintentionally unfollow me. So, you may have to just check in every once in a while.